The morning sun streamed through the stained-glass windows of St. Mary's Cathedral, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor where Elena Martinez stood frozen. Her grandmother's vintage lace dress, carefully altered to fit her petite frame, suddenly felt suffocating. The bouquet of white roses trembled in her hands as whispers rippled through the congregation behind her. "Where is he?" Her maid of honor, Sarah, hissed under her breath, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Elena's dark eyes remained fixed on the altar's empty space where Marcus should have been standing. 20 minutes had passed since the ceremony was supposed to begin. The priest cleared his throat uncomfortably, adjusting his vestments for the third time. Her phone buzzed, a text message that would change everything. "I can't do this, Elena. I'm sorry. You deserve better than someone who runs when things get real. Don't look for me." The bouquet slipped from her numb fingers, roses scattering across the pristine white runner. The gasps from the pews confirmed what her heart already knew. Everyone had seen her world collapse in real time. Her mother's sharp intake of breath cut through the cathedral's silence like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena heard her own voice, surprisingly steady despite the earthquake in her chest. "It appears there will be no wedding today." She lifted her chin, gathered the train of her dress, and walked down the aisle with as much dignity as she could muster. Each step echoed in the hushed cathedral, every eye following her exit. The humiliation burned, but beneath it, something harder began to crystallize: determination. Outside, the autumn air bit at her exposed shoulders as she stood on the cathedral steps, still in disbelief. Sarah appeared beside her, having shed her bridesmaid heels to run after her. "Elena, honey, he left me." The words came out flat, matter of fact. "In front of everyone we know. After 3 years together, after planning this day for 8 months, he just left." "That coward doesn't deserve you," Sarah said fiercely, wrapping Elena in her arms. "You're brilliant, you're beautiful, and you're going to show him exactly what he threw away." Elena pulled back, mascara streaking down her cheeks, but her eyes blazing with newfound resolve. "You're right. I am going to show him." She looked back at the cathedral where guests were now filing out, their faces a mixture of pity and curiosity. "I'm going to disappear for a while. Finish my MBA. Build something he could never even dream of." As she climbed into Sarah's car, Elena caught her reflection in the side mirror. The abandoned bride staring back at her was already beginning to transform, the vulnerability in her eyes hardening into something that would serve her well in the years to come. Marcus Rivera had made his choice. Now she would make hers. 3 months later, Elena was boarding a plane to London with a full scholarship to complete her MBA at Cambridge. She left behind the small town where everyone knew her story, where pity followed her like a shadow. She left behind the girl who had believed that love was enough, that promises meant something. She never looked back. 5 years later, Elena Blackwood stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse, watching the city come alive 30 stories below. The morning light caught the gleam of her wedding ring. Not the simple band she'd dreamed of wearing at 24, but a stunning 5-carat diamond that proclaimed her new reality to the world. "Mrs. Blackwood." Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The car is ready for the charity gala." "Thank you, Patricia. I'll be down in a moment." Elena smoothed her hands over the emerald silk gown that had cost more than her old annual salary. Her transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been carved from determination, 18-hour days, and the kind of ruthless ambition that only comes from having nothing left to lose. After Cambridge, she'd landed at Goldman Sachs, working her way up with a precision that impressed even the most cynical partners. It was there she'd met James Blackwood, brilliant, driven, and 10 years her senior. Their courtship had been a meeting of minds rather than hearts, built on mutual respect and shared ambitions. James had been upfront about what he offered: security, status, and a partnership in every sense of the word. In return, Elena brought her sharp intelligence, social grace, and a hunger for success that matched his own. Love, they'd agreed, was a luxury neither of them needed. They'd both been burned before. The penthouse elevator descended smoothly toward the lobby. Elena checked her reflection one final time. The scared girl from the cathedral was nowhere to be seen. In her place stood a woman who commanded boardrooms, who had her name on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, who wore confidence like armor. The charity gala was in full swing when they arrived at the Metropolitan Museum. Elena moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her husband's arm linked through hers as they navigated conversations with senators, CEOs, and old-money socialites. This was her world now, polished, powerful, and completely under her control. Elena. The voice stopped her mid-conversation with a Supreme Court justice's wife. Elena Martinez? She turned slowly, her social smile freezing as she met familiar dark eyes across the crowded room. Marcus Rivera stood 3 feet away, his face pale with shock. He'd filled out over the years, his boyish features sharpened into something more angular, more mature. But those eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her with love, then left her with nothing but a text message, remained unchanged. "It's Elena Blackwood now," she said coolly, her voice betraying nothing of the earthquake happening in her chest. "Marcus, what a surprise. I had no idea you'd be here." His voice was rougher than she remembered, uncertain in a way that the old Marcus never was. "You look," he swallowed hard. "You look incredible." "Thank you." She felt James's hand settle protectively on her lower back, his presence steadying her. "Marcus, I'd like you to meet my husband, James Blackwood." "Darling, this is Marcus Rivera, an old acquaintance from home." The word acquaintance landed like a slap, and she saw Marcus flinch almost imperceptibly. James extended his hand with the easy confidence of a man worth 9 figures. "Any friend of Elena's," James said smoothly, his grip firm and measuring. "Rivera, aren't you the architect who designed the new convention center downtown? Impressive work. You two know each other?" Elena asked, though something in her husband's tone suggested this meeting wasn't entirely coincidental. "We're actually hoping to hire Marcus for our new resort project in the Hamptons," James explained, his arm tightening slightly around Elena's waist. "Though I have to admit, I had no idea you two were acquainted." The irony wasn't lost on her. The man who'd left her standing at the altar was now seeking her husband's business. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. "We should continue this conversation later," Elena said, her smile sharp as crystal. "Enjoy the gala, Marcus." As they walked away, she felt his eyes following her across the room, but she didn't look back. She'd already done that once, 5 years ago, searching the cathedral for a man who was never coming back. This time, she was the one walking away. 2 weeks after the gala, Elena sat in her husband's corporate office, morning sun streaming through the windows as she reviewed the architectural proposals for their Hamptons project. The Rivera Designs portfolio lay open before her, and she had to admit, objectively, professionally, that Marcus's work was exceptional. "He's talented," James said, settling into the chair across from her desk. Her husband was nothing if not direct. "But I won't move forward with this if it makes you uncomfortable. There are other architects." Elena looked up from the blueprints, meeting her husband's steady gaze. In 5 years of marriage, James had never once asked about her past, accepting her need for privacy with the same respect he showed her business instincts. But she'd seen the way he'd watched her at the gala, filing away her reaction to Marcus with the sharp intelligence that had made him a billionaire before 40. "It was a long time ago," she said carefully. "We were different people then." "Were you?" James leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Because the man I met looked like he'd seen a ghost. And you? You looked like you wanted to become one." Before Elena could respond, Patricia's voice came through the intercom. "Mrs. Blackwood? Mr. Rivera is here for his appointment." Elena's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice level. "Send him in." Marcus entered the office with the careful confidence of a man who'd learned to armor himself since their last meeting. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that Elena suspected had cost him a significant portion of his fee, and his dark hair was perfectly styled. But his hands, she noticed, trembled slightly as he set down his portfolio. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood," he said formally. "Thank you for considering Rivera Designs for your project. Please sit." James gestured to the chair beside Elena's desk. "Your preliminary designs are impressive. The integration of sustainable elements while maintaining luxury standards shows real innovation." Marcus launched into his presentation with professional polish, discussing environmental impact, construction timelines, and budget projections. But Elena found herself watching his hands as he gestured, remembering how those same hands had traced promises on her skin, had fumbled nervously with her engagement ring in their tiny apartment. "The question is," James said when Marcus finished, "can you handle a project of this scope while maintaining your current client commitments? This isn't a small renovation. We're talking about a $40 million build." "I can handle it," Marcus replied, his eyes flickering briefly to Elena. "I've built my firm specifically to take on projects like this. You have my complete commitment." Commitment. The word hung in the air like smoke. Elena saw Marcus realize what he'd said, saw the flash of pain cross his features before he schooled them back to professional neutrality. "We'll need to think it over," Elena said, closing the portfolio with a sharp snap. "We'll have our decision by Friday." Marcus nodded, gathering his materials with the careful precision of a man trying not to let his hands shake. At the door, he paused. "Elena." His voice was softer now, stripped of its professional veneer. Could we talk? Just for a moment?" James stood smoothly. "I'll give you two some privacy." "Elena, I'll be in the conference room when you're ready." The door clicked shut behind her husband, leaving Elena alone with the ghost of her past. Marcus stood awkwardly by the door, his composure finally cracking. "I need you to know," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "that not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted what I did. Leaving you there, at the altar, it was the worst thing I've ever done. The most cowardly thing I've ever done." Elena remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "Why?" The question she'd carried for 5 years finally emerged. "Why didn't you just tell me you weren't ready? We could have postponed, could have worked through whatever you were feeling. Instead, you humiliated me in front of everyone we knew." Marcus's shoulders sagged. "I was 26 and terrified. You had all these dreams, these plans for the future, and I was barely keeping my head above water financially. I couldn't even afford the ring you deserved, couldn't give you the life I thought you wanted. That morning, getting dressed in my rented tux, all I could think about was how I was going to disappoint you every day for the rest of our lives. So you decided to devastate me instead?" Elena's voice remained level, but ice ran beneath it. "You decided that your fear was more important than my right to make my own choices." "No, Marcus ran his hands through his hair, destroying its careful styling. "God, Elena, I was an idiot. A scared kid who thought he was protecting you when all I was doing was protecting myself. I know there's no excuse. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life." Elena stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city she now commanded. "Do you know what you taught me that day, Marcus? You taught me that love isn't enough. That promises are just words people say until something harder comes along. You taught me to never again depend on someone else for my happiness." "Elena." She turned back to face him, and Marcus stepped backward at what he saw in her eyes. "You're looking at me like I'm the girl you left behind, but she doesn't exist anymore. You killed her when you walked away. What you're seeing now is what I built from what was left." The silence stretched between them, filled with everything they'd lost and could never recover. "I should go," Marcus said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, you should." Elena returned to her desk, picking up a different file as if he'd already vanished. "You'll have our decision on Friday." After he left, Elena sat alone in the office that bore her name on the door, surrounded by the empire she'd built from the ashes of her broken heart. Through the window, the city sprawled beneath her, full of possibilities and power she'd never dreamed of at 24. Her phone buzzed, a text from James. "Whatever you decide about the project, I support. But for what it's worth, you are magnificent." Elena smiled, a real smile this time. She'd learned to love differently now, with her eyes open, her feet on solid ground, her heart protected but not closed. Marcus had been right about one thing. She did deserve better than someone who runs when things get real. She'd found it, built it, become it herself. On Friday, Rivera Designs received a politely worded rejection letter. Elena never saw Marcus again, though she occasionally glimpsed his name in architectural magazines, his career flourishing in ways it might never have if he'd stayed in their small town, married to a girl with big dreams and a trusting heart. Sometimes, late at night in her penthouse overlooking the city she'd conquered, Elena wondered what might have been. But she never regretted what was. The girl who'd been abandoned at the altar was gone, but the woman who'd risen from her ashes was exactly where she belonged. Some phoenixes, she'd learned, burn more beautifully the second time around. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these other amazing stories.